Testing one, two. Testing one. All right. There we go. Technical issues, technical issues. I don't know how that happened like that. So I apologize. I was talking for a hot minute and didn't even know that the bar was not moving. So we back on, and so I love the fact that I could have some of my I got a whole studio here. So some of it is live and some of it is here. So I see what's happening on Facebook a little bit, YouTube a little bit, the website a little bit, and also I can control what happens here. So sometimes if something ain't working right, y'all hit me up. One love, one love. Adrian. Adrian. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. So as we get started, again, this is the African Speaks. Our focus is the rise of the African. Main focus. I don't know what's happening with my. If y'all see me grab my left eye, I don't know what's happening. It's been itching all day. Not all day, but just last few minutes. I think that dry eye. I need a little eye drops. But and you see the energy. The energy's off the Richter scales before I even get started, which means tonight I speak for those with ears to hear. Because everybody ain't going to get this one. Everybody's not going to get this one. So tonight I speak for those with ears to hear. So if you coming past the African tonight, I'm about to be on raw form. I literally put this one together. Woo! This one is hot. This one is hot. And I want to tell you before we begin how I came up, how this particular the focus tonight came about, right? But before we do that, we want to make sure that you help us reach the diaspora. Help us reach the diaspora. Help, because this is what we're trying to pull black people together for the rise of the African globally, not just in my city, because it's coming, not just in my state, because it's coming, not just on the East Coast, because it's coming, not just in the USA, because that's coming too. Woo! I'm locked in. I'm locked in. I'm locked in. We talking about global connection, a global Pan-African connection where we come to bear on all our issues around the world. That's the rise of the African. We don't need everybody. You can get me 1 million people out of 46 million of us here in the States. Give me some of that million out of Brazil. They got 82 million in Brazil. Man, please. Mexico, Haiti, Venezuela, Colombia, France, 4 million. Give me some of that million. Give me some of them there. And I can show you a black people changing the world. When I tell you this vision is big, but the energy is to produce it is here. And I'm sitting in it. And again, tonight I'm speaking for those with ears to hear. Because everybody's not going to get this. So I ask you, if you can, if you're willing, if it moves you, and if it don't, do it anyway. Please like, comment, share if you're watching us on Facebook. That's important because we can't get to these numbers without you. We just really can't. So let this word get to somebody who needs it. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please do it again. Hit subscribe. Hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so every time we go live, you'll see us. Why? Because we are always streaming. Now, y'all going to see this page pop up on a regular basis tonight. Because tonight I'm going to show you how it all piles up into one picture. Brother, can you teach a class? Yeah, I could teach a Sunday class for the young adults. I can even drop some information inside there just in case a parent is listening. And you want to hit the spirit of a parent. I can do that. It's not just for the babies. No, it's not. If your kid is 4 years old, I'll put enough energy. If I know when I get the demographics down right, if we got more young ones watching, I'll still have the high energy, but they're gonna be some seriously profound kids. And I filmed some last night. Man, I can show you some 3-year-olds with fifth grade reading levels. They were amazing what we recorded last night. Amazing. Yeah, and I'll show it to you one of these days. Now, African Speaks. That's it. Tuesday night. Then you have Thursday. You have the Afro Stream. Come on, at 7 o'clock. You should be there. And then on Saturdays, you got African History and African Spirituality. You're going to see this pop up often this evening. I'm going to come back to this as much as possible because I'm going to show you how it all relates. Tonight, I speak for those with ears to hear. I'm going to keep saying that because, everybody not going to get this. Because we don't need everybody to save the world. God needs those who respond to the call because he calls all of us. He calls all of us. So I speak in different arenas with some of the similar topics where they cross paths from each other, right? Because everything is interconnected. And so if you don't get something in one place, you'll get something in another, but it's all interconnected. And you're going to understand that tonight. Why? Because I'm speaking for those with ears to hear. We are focused on the rise of the African. Now, let's get into it. Using your invisible power programming towards the rise of the African. Woo! Now, I had somebody call me this past week, and said, brother, I went back to listen to that and it fired me up. His brother said he was lit. He said the Holy Spirit hit him and information started being poured into him in terms of the metaphysical possibilities of what this means. He said, we can go back into that. We can go back into that. And he wanted to come on Sunday. And so I pushed this aside and said, you know what, brother, we're going to do it on Sunday night because he was off. But then I get a call, couldn't do it. Now, I didn't want to do the show by myself. I said, man, because he loved it, and so I was coming up with a whole new topic for tonight, right? And I was going to save this and bring it back. And then I got a text message this morning from a dear person to me saying, I believe in your brilliance. And I paused. I said, wow, okay. And I asked the question, what triggered that? And it was like, yeah, I'm just saying it just to say it. Okay. Well, at that time, I was wrestling with which topic I'm using for the night. And then as I continued to wrestle with the topic, and I said, you know what? I literally got off the phone. I was working. I worked till wee hours, had to quickly cook dinner straight up. We in the living room. We in the living room conversating with the African. He speaks tonight. And then I sat down and said, it's time. I'm going to do this one. And I sat down, and just before I went live, 30 minutes, let you know, and I'm going to tell you how the ancestors work. I did my rituals this morning. I called my ancestors to walk with me today. I asked them to pour into me. I said, I want to know what it feels like to rock with you for a day. And so it was a particular set of them. And they said they need to hear this right now. They need to hear this right now. And then the ancestors, let's get this, because you have ancestors who were gifted in different things, different levels. Well, this week, according to my spirituality class, now, again, if you have tuned in to African spirituality, I tell you that I have a church. Yes, the African has a church he goes to. Pan-African Orthodox Christian Church, Shrines of the Black Madonna. And the African has a particular traditional African sect that he follows. Yes, and I don't speak on it just yet. I said we're going to hold off because as I begin to unwind the foundation of African spirituality, I said I want you to get you the foundation before I tell you, I break down the different areas, because we say if you tune in to African spirituality class, even African spirituality, because I tell you on African spirituality class that if there are 4,200 different African tribes, there are 4,200 ways of expressing your religion, expressing your spirituality, right? So it's okay. Why? Because it's all ours. African history class. It's all ours. Everything that the world does in today's world came from African culture. This is why this is important. It's all ours. So I sat down and said, you know what? Let's switch it. Let's switch gears and tap in. Now, just to let y'all know, I called on my ancestors who were actually slaves this year, today. The ones who were slaves. Not the ones who were warriors, not the ones who were doctors, seers, not the ones who were planners, not the ones who were educated. No, today our exercise was, we want you to speak to the ones that were slaves. And he said most times people don't want this one. Why? Because you don't know what you're going to get. And you'll be surprised, because my experience, they've been dealing with my faith. Yes. The ones who were slaves were dealing with my faith. Why? Because at that moment, before they had that experience, while in that experience, before the experience, we're going to talk about that. Before the experience, Africans knew who they were. So when you get somebody and you can find them, and they can't do anything to produce anything that God called them to produce, right? They got to believe that one day that this thing is going to change. And so they begin to have faith and pour their faith into those who will come after, so they begin to endure their atrocities. Now I said, what? Brother, we want you to understand the faith we lived through the pain, horror, and suffering, because you're not in your position without us having faith that one day we're going to raise up somebody who's going to take this over. Now you understand the rise of the African. This is not the voice of me. This is the voice of those who came before me. I'm speaking for those with ears to hear tonight. I'm about to blow this one up. So, when I got a call and the brother was like, yo, can we do the invisible power again? Let's talk about the metaphysics of it all. Let's talk about the whole, because when we did it, and he was just hyped, right? So I said, I can't deliver this by myself if I don't tap into the excitement and energy that was in him when he called me. Whoa. I was upset when it canceled, because I was looking forward to it. But I said, you know what? Let's ride, because we can do a part 3 when he shows up. Right? But when we talked about the invisible power programming towards the rise of the African, right? We talked about, we get it. We looked at our invisible power of the imagination. Let me get that in there. Because we were talking about Afrofuturism and being able to see ourselves in the future, right? And that's how it came out. So I broke it down and talked about the power of the invisible power of being the power of the imagination. And when you go into your imagination, you go into your phase of the area where you're creating it's the weapon of mass creation. Your imagination is the weapon of mass creation. Why? Because that's when you're in your God phase. When you are using your invisible power, which is according to, tapping into, because you have multiple invisible powers. Woo! Let's get there. Let's get that. But we were talking about the tapping into the imagination, because they're your creator. You're walking in your co-creative phase, your co-creative arena, when you can close your eyes and see something that does not exist, and then come out with your eyes open, or your eye open. I'm speaking with those with ears to hear. You come out with your eye open and you begin to produce. When you sit down and go back and look up how many black individuals were inventors, and because you was a slave or was a second class citizen, you couldn't have a patent, so you had to give your idea to somebody of Caucasian persuasion. And so you had to watch them make riches while you got pennies off your intellectual power. That's why my ancestors who were slaves said, dude, you got to have faith, because we didn't have an opportunity to express who we were, to express that imagination. We had to give it up to an enslaved mindset. We had to give it up to our owners, our handlers. We couldn't profit off of anything until they made sure that if an individual profits off of anything, that individual is not free enough to save his people. Woo! Let's talk about it. So even though your imagination can create something, you only minimize its creation. Woo! Chains on your mind minimizes your creation. Regardless how big you are, because we got tons of people out there making billions, but I don't hear nobody hollering about the rise of the African. Let's change these communities. Let's educate a generation of black youth, world of Akibaland, that are geared and set to be the future leadership of the Pan-African, the global Pan-African community. World of Akibaland. This is what we talk about. Weapons of mass creation. The imagination. But he said, brother, let's go deeper. He said, you could have went so many different ways on that. I said, yeah, but I was talking about Afrofuturism. But he wanted to go deeper. And I said, okay, last minute, can you pull it all together? I couldn't pull this lesson together if I did not tap into all of the other previous lessons I was riding with. So I pulled images from everywhere. So if you don't rock with us on Sunday, on Tuesday, on Thursday, on Saturday, then you're missing. Because that's how this one came about. I'm speaking for those with ears to hear. He said, brother, we have to talk more about that spiritual self. Now, I don't even know where I'm at because I'm in my zone right now. That spiritual self. And I said, okay, let's talk about this spiritual self. Because there's a difference. There are two sides of you. Woo! There are two sides of you. There's that worldly self, and then there's that spiritual self. Now, the spiritual self, and it's clear, I've done this on Sunday. So if you're missing Sunday, you're missing out on knowledge and wisdom. You're missing out on it. You're missing out on some knowledge and an opportunity to gain some wisdom by the application of that knowledge. And I'm going to bring that up again in a little bit. When you're dealing with your spiritual self or your worldly self, that worldly self is an organism where the world creates you as an organism of oppression. As an organism that is you are a manifestation of systematic racism. That's what the worldly self does to a black individual the world over, even in Africa, because we said it. Africa is still plagued with colonialism. We're still plagued here with the mark of slavery. It's colonialism or the mark of slavery. Either way, you got chains. We got chains. However, when you start dealing in your spiritual self, those chains begin to unlock. And so we always say that studying your history, that's that information, begins the journey of self-awareness and self-discovery. It begins it, but not until you start tapping into the spirituality of the people who created the history you studying. Woo. That's why it's so important, man. Man, you got to show up on these days. I'm speaking for those with ears to hear today. So when you're dealing with your spiritual self, you're dealing with what God created. Not what the world has done, but what God created. Now, when you go into your spiritual self and you tap into your spiritual self, it'll help you go through the turmoils in life that you need to go through to break off those chains. And breaking chains is not easy. You got to first understand the difference between the two: spiritual, worldly. And sometimes it blends in so well you can't even see you. That's that gray area. I dropped that graphic. We don't have that one set up. But if you missed it the other days, you don't understand that gray area that black people live in, where we don't know that we're not living our spiritual selves. And if you live in your spiritual self, you fight against the situation that you sitting in, not by yourself, but you connect with a group of people that are doing it collectively. Why? Because that's who we are as a people. That's that covenant promise we have. Woo! If you ain't been here on Sunday, you don't know that everything we do talk about the relationship that African people got with God. Everything we do. Yeah, I'm on it tonight. We own it tonight. I'm speaking for those with ears to hear. And so we're going to talk about that invisible power of the spiritual self. And we discussed this past Sunday. When you start looking for you in this world, you want to understand not your worldly self, not the organism of oppression. You know that's there. You've had that experience. It's been talked about your entire life where black people are. But when it's your turn to say, you know what, let me take a look at who I am in the world, you give yourself a pause. Why? Because you don't want to function. You're trying not to, but a lot of us are diving in to that worldly self, and man, the internet is blowing up with it. Blowing up with the worldly. And we ain't producing nothing with the power of, or this level of communication gives us. That's why I said, when I said it, I saw social media years ago. I said, well, if I ever get online, which I was fighting it. I said, because ain't nobody saying nothing I want to hear. And I said, then you have to be the what you want to hear. I said, wow, that's a large responsibility. But the wisdom, the knowledge of self was implemented in the action, and it produced something. So now that the knowledge becomes wisdom. And I begin to focus on the Mayat, which is understanding the harmony and balance of God. Woo. Let's get it. When I'm talking about the Mayat, if you did not tune in to African history class this Saturday, Mayat comes from the ancient world of Kemet, which is Egypt, and Kush. Let's talk about it. Kush was the first group empire together that formed the spiritual systems that the world was taught off of. Let's talk about it. So when I say the Mayat, it is the balance and harmony we have with nature and God. Woo! That's the beginning. Understanding that is the beginning of you accessing the invisible power. Now, in that space where you're working on the invisible power and you're studying African history, African culture, African traditions, and then you take time to study the spirituality that the people had as they created such a great vibrant life, you come into an understanding. And if you didn't go to African spirituality class, you missed it. But we're going to get it tonight, because tonight I'm speaking for those with ears to hear. We live in a religious universe. Africans knew from day one, we live in a religious universe. Everything around us is God. I create you in my own image, meaning that you have the ability to create. That's that world of imagination. The lion behind me cannot imagine something and then go create it. You know what? I imagine me building a brick house. No, you can't imagine that. You just imagine chasing somebody down and eating them. You ain't chasing me down, because in Kemet, the balance was so strong, they said man walked with the big cat. Wow. The big cat. So when we start looking at Ethiopia and how the brothers was riding the lions into war, you sitting there, you see an African man coming at you riding a lion like, yo, what's up? What you gonna do? But that's when you understand that you live in a universe, a religious universe, and everything is God and everything has harmony. You want the big cat to be your friend, make sure it's not hungry. Feed it. They had an abundance of life. Make sure it's not hungry. You want it to go wild and beastly? Yeah, have him hunt for his food. That's a whole different group. Man, a religious universe. There was nothing. And in African spirituality class, we went through every facet of life. God and nature and everything in nature down to a rock, crystals, stones, mountains, valleys, caves, water, animals, insects, grass, plants, trees, air, star, moon. It's all an expression of God. And so when you're dealing with the issue of knowing, living in the knowing that everything is an expression of God and it's up to you to access that power, now you're going to start dealing with African spirituality, the rise of the African, because that's what we're trying to tap into, your African spirituality, without you even knowing it. We got some Christians here who are so Christian, you forget that Christianity is a manifestation of ancient African wisdom. It is the youngest of all religions, the youngest. And if you study African spirituality, you realize that they take elements of African spirituality to create Christianity as a faith. It's all ours. Islam, same thing. Islam and Christianity, they the youngest two. The youngest two. But they all have the foundation of understanding that it's all God. Now they take certain elements out so that you don't become the fullest you. Now in that expression, knowing that it's all God and then knowing that it's all power, how does ancient African individuals know that we are our spiritual beings living a physical existence? We just started saying that in the Christian community. Became popular. They lived it. They didn't have to say it. They lived it. And that's how they were able to create so many things. They lived it. Now here, when you're looking at that, and you're looking, and we said that there were 5 questions you had to ask yourself last Sunday. You should have been there to get to more power and focused purpose. 5 questions, and we're not going to go over those because I want to finish this lesson. Accessing the invisible power. So understanding that everything is God. You don't look at anything as though it was disconnected from God. You can't treat anybody. That's why they say in Christianity, the 2 most strongest commandments: love thy God with all thy heart, mind, and soul, and your brother as thyself. It's about relationship. And if you're missing Sunday service, I say it every Sunday. Everything we do is about our relationship with the Creator. I'm speaking for those with ears to hear tonight because we diving deeper into your invisible power. And so when they talking about giving God praise, let's deal with it. When we talking about giving God praise, see the word. If you access to African spirituality on Saturday, you've seen this word for almost a month now. If you haven't, that's your fault. Y'all need to tap in. Let's go, because we giving this wisdom. We sharing this knowledge so that you can have wisdom by applying what you hear to your life experience. The Kuntu it means modality. How you worship. How you express your praise. How you give God the thanks that he deserves for all of his his providence. Because he sustains everything he creates. And he sustains you. So that's why in African spirituality they pray for rain. They had sacred stones, sacred dances, modality. How do you express your worship? And when you look at African people, or we can say African Americans, American Africans, blacks, Negroes, how we express our worship. Woo! Let's talk about it. I'm speaking for those with ears to hear. There's nobody on this earth that gives God more praise the way we do. We surrender it all and we crack jokes on it. We truly crack jokes on when somebody actually taps into that spirit realm. Because if you haven't tapped into it on a regular basis, when you get it, yeah, you go crazy. You don't know how to harness. God don't want to scare you. God needs you to harness that power to produce something. And so Africans knew that about modality, that kintu, that vibration. I should have brought my drum over here. The vibration. Why? Because that's when you're truly seeking enlightenment. I'm going to understand that I live in a religious universe. The power and energy of God is accessible to me. And there is no people on earth that does it better than our own. So how do we do it without embracing the culture, tradition, and heritage? Rituals, ceremonies, all of it. Man, please. I can't live without no gospel singing. That's straight up. We took that and took off and added our modality, the way we express ourselves to God, to it. Yeah, I went to a particular spiritual, and I'm not gonna say the name because I'm not disrespectful. But I went to a spiritual discipline, sat there and couldn't get into the music. I said maybe I need to grow a little bit more because this is not the expression that I'm used to. So I said I'm gonna take my time, and I did, and I learned to like it. However, the way we express ourselves in song and dance and instrumentation, we surrender to what? The vibrations. It's the vibrations of God's, because surrendering to that opens us up to that frequency where we can get to enlightenment. That's where that is. It's having that rhythm, that beat, that even in prayer, meditation, yoga, movements, everything accesses that power. Because when you act with that expression, you tap into that power, you get to that frequency where where God vibrates. He said, if you want to get rid of somebody, vibrate at a higher frequency. You don't have to leave. You don't have to disconnect. No, your frequency. Wow, I did this here when we dealt with frequency. I did that here when we talked about your frequency vibrating so high, it transforms everything and everybody around you. Let me see if I can do this. It transforms. So when you hit a tuning fork and it vibrates, that's the invisible power that you have. What frequency are you vibrating on? It vibrates off of you and it hits the other person. And if the other person is neutral, where you have a lesser energy than me, I can get you to vibrate as high as I do. I can get you to feel something the way I feel it. It's that invisible power that you can tap into. And so what is the tools? They said black folk are not using the tools that we have available to us, which is the invisible power. That's with ritual, that's with chants, that's with African dance, that's with prayer, ceremony. That's everything. Why? Because we're giving ourselves, surrendering ourselves to that which created us, asking it to feed us more power that we need to fight off what we're going through. The invisible power is that spiritual experience you have when you vibrate at a higher frequency. And we talked about the energy in every cell. Oh, let me switch to that. Ooh. Because I did that on a Sunday. If you're missing a Keeble Inspirational Sunday, you're missing some knowledge that'll help you gain some more wisdom about yourself. That frequency, that atom moving back and forth, vibration. You can heal yourself with vibration. Someone else with vibration. They said the future medicine is frequency. Do you know that our soul is comprised of harmony, mayat, the harmony balance in which God created this earth in? You can look at disease as disharmony. That means everything, every organ has its vibrational tone. Man, and you giving God the right praise and you doing what God needs to do. What happens then? You vibrate and you can heal self. I knew that as a kid. I get sick. I know how I'm better in 2 days. Mommy, I'll be okay. Why? So I gotta focus. And I didn't understand what I was saying. I gotta focus. And I got sick a lot, but I had to focus. And when it got worse, I had to focus more. And then I got to the point where I said, look, I'm not taking this medicine no more. Why? Because it hinders my ability to focus. And I don't say not take medicine. I say take it. But I also say, watch how you're vibrating. Watch what you're reading. Watch what you're listening to. Watch how you're praying. Watch how who's around you. It's disharmony. And the minute that you find that harmony, that God consciousness starts to develop, then that's when the imagination truly kicks in and we become creative beings, co-creator with the creator. We have dominion over all of this, but we have to be able to vibrate at that frequency where we know we're walking in that era of our strength, that invisible power. What? My boy Eric Salcedo, one love, hopefully he watches. He used to look at me and says, how do you do what you do? I said, how do you not? That's a bigger question. Because I know how to tap into God. It was what I was trained to do in my community. Is it? You can sit down and be down. And then as you go through African spirituality and you start interacting with your ancestors, ancestral veneration, not worship, veneration, where you're giving them honor for everything that they're helping you with. When you say, oh, Big Mama's an angel. Yeah, and so is everybody else. Just add them to your conversation. And thank them for the journey they went. Vibration. They will pour in you. Along with the creator, they will pour in you. Get you going through the right steps, helping you open doors that you can't see. Woo. Vibration. Sometimes you can feel. I told kids, we're talking about Akibaland on Sunday. Have you ever had somebody walk into the room? Make sure y'all show up on Sunday. Have you ever had somebody walk into the room and could tell that they were angry, but they didn't have to say a word? Have you ever had somebody just laugh with joy and you just smiled and just joined into it? Have you ever had somebody who were hyper full of energy, just wanted to give, and you was just, I want to receive? Frequency. And so we talked about it a couple of days ago. What is real self-care? What is real self-care? Tapping in to the God power, the God frequency that he puts in us to put us back into harmony for the sake of changing the world around us, because it's the world we live in that gives us our constraints. You know that you ain't vibrating if you sit down and say, you know what, I took a vacation, I came back to be a well-rested slave. What? No. We kingdom build. Building environments that's conducive of allowing us to be what God called us to be. World of Akibaland. Can you imagine a generation of youth that is self-cared for? Where they know that I belong in God, I'm of God, and I see everything that God creates, and I'm always in harmony with the environment with me, so I have the power that I would not of the ordinary person. I'm sorry, I walk water. I mean, I do the virtually impossible. What? People asking, Brother Ajay, how do you do this? How do you work full time through COVID, support the community and the kids, and keep doing what you're doing? I'm tapping in. I'm self-caring. That's that invisible power. What we need is, and we did this, education reform. We need to understand what this mechanism is. This mechanism of Mayat, right? Mechanism of Mayat, of balance and harmony with God and nature. What does it do once you access it? Now, I don't want to talk about the information that the brother gave because I want him back on the show and I want him to say it. But when you see uh, the story of Samson, sorry, I had to do it, bro. I had to do it because he brought it up and it was a great analogy. People couldn't understand where Samson got his energy from. And I'm listening to him when he was so hyper. This is not my knowledge. This was what was blessed in the mindset of the brother who said, you gotta go deeper. Because if you're looking at somebody who's big and muscular, you can tell that person's strong. He said, I think the images of Samson was opposite. I think he was 5'7", about 170 pounds. He didn't look strong at all. Not at all. Because you can't be amazed at somebody who's bulky. Every time you see an image of it, they give them somebody that's bulky. Why? Because it's easy to understand. But with education, reformation, you know that, wait a minute, the size does not get you power. It's the surrender to God that gets you power. It's your submission to the universe that gets you power. It's your relationship to your ancestors that gets you power. It's being able to see God in everything, not just people, but a rock has God in it. I'm speaking for those with ears to hear. We need a education reformation where we not education reform where we're not denouncing African spirituality, African culture. We're embracing it and looking how it is intertwined in every society and how they use it for their benefit to keep us oppressed. We need an education reform where we stop hating on our history. Because if you want power, you got to never forget your roots. You got to go back in and dive in. Ain't nothing. Now, you can use these unseen powers for good or bad. That's why they say black magic, because every time black folk came against white people, they called it black magic because it was against them, not each other. Because when you got somebody who's oppressing you, why not use it against them? Is that something wrong? Using the only weapon you have that actually overpowers them, is something wrong with that? Absolutely not. You can never forget your roots. And so this is why I do all the classes that I do, because you to tap in, have you have a place to tap in to those roots. Because you need the power from the creator, from your ancestors, from our history, from everything from this melanin. Ooh, when I do, woo, we might just do the melanin conversation again. It's in your DNA. That radiation soaks up the rays of the sun to empower your body. It gives you vitamins, woo, minerals, woo. It's a harmonizing agent. Melanin is a harmonizing agent which helps you vibrate with the universe. Come on, it's hidden power. Brother, I wish you was on this conversation because we would blow this one up. You can never forget your roots, because forgetting who you are and how you were able to create so many things as a people, you diminish the access of power you can have. But if you remember your roots and you go back and remember what we created, and then you study the spiritual essence of who they were when they created it, you'll know how to tap in to that invisible power that permeates all around you and inside you. That's God. And it's not in your traditional way. It's just not. You got to add this African culture in it for you to get it. Man, you know when that rhythm hits you and you just start sitting there, and we don't get it. Why do we vibrate the way we do? Why do we dance? It's because of the melanin. It's the harmonizing agent. Because God wants us always in sync with the universe, because in that invisible power begins. You'll be able to speak something. That's why they said the power of life and death is in your tongue. But if you're not you're not vibrating in the realm of God, you can't speak something and it happens. But when you African and you entombed and you give worship and praise to God for all things, big and small, from the ladybug to the sun itself, praise on everything. Find yourself in harmony with it all. Then you can program towards the rise of the African in you. You will be able to walk on water. I'm speaking for those with ears to hear tonight. I don't know how you see yourself in the world, but I do know if you stick around with the African, you allow this to soak in your brain, soak in your heart, soak in your mind, and let it resonate in your spirit. The African in you is absolutely coming out. Now, if those who have heard the 22, I'm speaking with those with ears to hear, because some people could connect with it and some people couldn't. 22 is that year that God is giving more energy, pouring out to those who have found their purpose or want to find their purpose and going to use it for that. There's more energy out there, that invisible power out there that you feel like somebody's touching you. We got a whole year of it. We got February coming up, 2/22/22. Man, I don't know what that day has in store for me, but I'm prepared for it. I'll feel it. I tapped into something tonight because I didn't have this much energy all day. And my ancestors said, go get him, son. We need you to speak on the faith that we had as a people that pulled us out of this. Because when you were a slave, dealing with slave ancestors, my veneration for all they went through, they said we didn't have anything but suffering and pain and torment. But you couldn't shake our faith because we believed that one day you were coming. That was a revelation. They said one day you were coming. And so they're going to hold on. You're a manifestation of the faith of your ancestors who had to endure 400 years of slavery. You're a manifestation of those ancestors before slavery who created religion, who understood that we live in a mayat, harmony and balance of God's wisdom, laws, energy. It's just everything. You want to heal? Find yourself in balance with the Creator, with nature, with each other. Then you're going to experience the rise of the African. One love.